Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Subnautica 2 critique video again. I recently made a video, and apparently the biggest crime I committed was not misunderstanding what an early access game is. According to some people, I simply don't get what early access is, so I got absolutely flamed for criticizing the state of a released product, because apparently the words early access are now supposed to function as a magical shield against criticism. So I felt the need to make this video, not because I enjoy arguing with strangers on the internet, and not definitely because I enjoy being negative, but because without criticism, nothing changes. Playing pretend is not how products improve. Telling developers everything is amazing when it clearly isn't does not help anyone or anything. So, let's address the giant Reaper Leviathan in the room first. The game is in early access, quotation marks. I've heard this argument over and over again, and honestly, I think people are focusing on the wrong thing. The main problem with most early access games are usually pretty obvious. Crashes, broken saves, game-breaking bugs, systems that barely function, mechanics that clearly have not been tested. Subnautica 2 is not really suffering from most of these problems, is it now? Battery systems are working, sonar is working, scanner is magnificently working. Have you seen the particles while it scans? Like, depth progression is already defined, oxygen balancing is already there, the roadmap exists, there are even future modules and assets already present inside the game. You can literally find evidence throughout like the world that future zones have already been outlined and planned if you have checked like how the red lines are mapped out. You can see the boundaries, you can see the structure, you can see where things are supposed to go next, and that is exactly why I have a hard time looking at this and seeing an unfinished product, but an early access game, apparently. Because most of the systems are not unfinished, they are functioning, they are polished, they work. The problem is not that the systems are broken, the problem is that the game feels shallow. There's a difference, there is a gigantic difference. This doesn't feel like a game struggling to find its identity, they had a decade for it. It feels like a game that already knows exactly what it wants to be, but was released before there was enough meaningful content to support it. And that brings me to what I think is one of the biggest issues in the entire game. The wildlife, the creature design, the biome design, because this is where the illusion will start falling apart. Even if we assume this is an alien world with a completely different ecology than anything we understand, that still does not excuse how artificial everything feels. The creatures move, but they do not really live. The same animations repeat endlessly. The same behavior loops repeat endlessly. Day and night barely seem to matter. Biome differences barely seem to matter. Most wildlife behaves exactly the same no matter where you encounter it. Aggressive, aggression feels like less like an ecosystem and more like a gameplay accessory that has been like put everywhere. Apparently like every creature on the planet is living in a perfect harmony until the game randomly decides somebody should attack something. Namely the hammerheads that keep like bopping their heads towards each other, or the hammerhead that keeps always attacking the same crab when you go to the same place. Everything feels staged, everything is placed, everything feels like an object sitting on a shelf waiting for you to arrive. And this becomes even more obvious because the game constantly sends you through the same gameplay loop. Go to location, enter structure, find thing, leave, repeat again and again and again. How many times do I have to go there, Jonathan? Now, because there is already a previous game in the exact franchise, I expected more, okay? I did expect more. I expected more dynamic ecosystems, more creature interaction, more emergent behavior, more life! More life! This is about sea life, man! Like, instead, once you leave what I would call the first 2-hour honeymoon phase of this game, like, you really start running out of things to scan, don't you? Why is that? Keep that idea in your mind, because we're gonna address that very aggressively later. You start running out of meaningful wildlife encounters, you start running out of interesting discoveries. What replaces them? Large, aggressive creatures everywhere. And not because the areas aren't necessarily need them. Mangoes, for example. But because without them, many of these locations would have almost nothing happening at all. Collect food, collect some metals, move on, and that's it. And the funniest part is that many of these creatures are not actually designed to behave as well. They're designed to chase. The moment you stop acting like prey, their behavior starts breaking down. Like, try swimming aggressively towards them. Like, in the videos in the background, you are probably have seen a lot of those kind of things already. Like, just follow them. Move into their space. Suddenly, like, the illusion collapses. The creature begins turning awkwardly, tracking becoming consistent. Behavior starts looking like code instead of life. Then we get to the like third phase of the game, the alien room section, and this is where things really start bothering me, like really did, because suddenly the world feels like completely dead. No hunting, no ecosystem, no visible interaction, no feeling that anything is actually living there. It's like the entire region is frozen in time, mate. Frozen in time. Nothing moves, nothing evolves, nothing reacts, nothing exists beyond waiting for player to get there. Then eventually, you reach the asset pool, and somehow the deadliest area in the entire game suddenly feels like more alive than the areas that came before it. The supposedly dying world somehow manages to put its most active wildlife in the third phase inside a giant pool of acid. Which feels like completely backwards, doesn't it? And then we arrive at the, like, stars of the show. Let's say, the Leviathans that go around those zones. Like, the creature people keep telling me they're terrifying. Honestly, I don't know what to say about those things. These things occupy an enormous percentage of the playable space, and what do they actually do? What does Leviathan do? A couple of attacks? 2 attacks actually, a roar, an eating animation that never changes, and then they forget you exist because your toe is sticking out of the water, or because you cross some invisible trigger boundary. Like, the scariest thing about these creatures isn't what they do. It is how much territory they occupy while doing almost nothing. They feel like the old uncle you have in the basement that and that's where like the illusion finally like breaks for me, because a world can be large, a world can be beautiful, a world can even be dangerous. There is no problem with that. But if it doesn't feel alive, eventually, as a player, you start like noticing the machinery behind the curtain. And once that happens, exploration starts turning into something very different. It starts becoming discovery. And starts becoming like a search for content. It is a search for content. It is not exploration anymore. And because once the illusion of living world starts like fading, the player naturally shifts their attention like towards the systems that are supposed to keep them engaged. The survival system, the crafting system, the progression system. The things that are supposed to carry the game after the initial wonder starts like wearing off. And honestly, like, I am not even going to spend too much time talking about this. The complete lack of thought put into fish, fish caught, wildlife management, how irrelevant food and survival aspects of the game actually are in this world. Food balance is just all over the place. There's no like real feeling of progression where you can like clearly identify what is supposed to be an early game food source and what is supposed to be an end game and what is supposed to be a mid game food source. Health balancing while being like attacked by a smaller creature feels like very questionable, doesn't it? The automation and crafting, like time that make absolutely no sense. Some of the materials like barely exist as gameplay assets or mechanics. Or let's talk about grease, for example. How many times have you used grease in this game? It is a thing that you make in this. Oh, I'm already hearing early access dudes. One time. You use grease only one time in this game. In an entire game filled with crafting systems, then like grease completely disappears from existence of like the whole crafting system. It will come back, by the way, in the next patches. I promise you. Like, let's talk about resource distribution. Oh, my favorite. Resource distribution is equally strange because you either have way too much of something or almost none of it. There's rarely a satisfying middle ground. Food plant produce like food at the speed of light. That is another resource that exists there. It goes from 0% to 100% in like 2 minutes, 3 minutes. Like entire survival mechanic becomes irrelevant because of it. And then there's an inventory management, let's say, or rather the complete absence of inventory management because there's no weight system. There's no meaningful limitation to your bag space. You can carry enough like oxygen tanks to stay underwater for about 1 hour and 10 minutes. If you have the right amount of oxygen tanks, because there's enough resources definitely for it that you can easily find everywhere, you can, like, as a level 1 player, you can stand inside the water for half an hour. And I'm not saying the game needs realism, I'm saying the system should matter. Because when survival system stop mattering, survival stops being gameplay and starts becoming background decoration. And the pattern keeps repeating throughout the entire game as you make progress through it. The systems function, but they rarely evolve. The mechanics exist, but they rarely deepen, and eventually you start asking like a very uncomfortable question. What is the player actually progressing towards? The tree? Definitely not the tree, not the story. Because like after the first few hours, the game starts running into like other problem. Content density, let's talk about that. Let's talk about actual structure of this world that has been like put in front of you. The game is essentially divided into a few 3 major progression phases. The problem is that the amount of meaningful content drops dramatically the deeper you go. The first hours are packed with discoveries, new scans, new blueprints, new creatures, new locations, mysteries of a story. Everything feels exciting, everything feels important, everything feels rewarding. You can find upgrades in every nook and cranny, then slowly the frequency starts like dropping and dropping and dropping. The scans become less common, the discoveries become less common, the interesting locations become less common, the world gets bigger, but somehow it feels smaller. And when I look at the map, like, I cannot help but notice how much of it feels like empty space separating actual content, instead of being like a bridge. Like, massive regions, huge ranges of terrain, entire Leviathan zones, and surprisingly little of substance happening inside any of them. There are only, like, so many times you can send me, like, into another wreck, another structure, another objective marker, and ask me to repeat the exact same cycle before I start, like, noticing patterns there. Like, I started, like, seeing it, like, from the second quest in this game, so-called. The incomprehensibly incompetent robot friend that we had sent you there. Like, go inside crash ship, find thing, leave. Go inside crash ship, find thing, leave, repeat. Leave, repeat. Go, leave, repeat. The game keeps, like, expanding physically, but not mechanically. Do not do that. And before I get to why I'm saying all of this, I have to tell you something statistically about players and playbase. So, this is an old thing, like they tested this on 2,500-ish players. I multiplied it just by 50, so the numbers are okay-ish. So look, from Steam, from every 100,000 copies of a game that is sold, 70,000 are downloaded and launched. About 40,000 play past 2 hours. 15,000 to 20,000 people make it past 10 hours. And somewhere between like 5,000 and 20,000 actually finish games. Now think about that for a second and put it next to content density from the start of the game until the current end of the game. Like, if most players never make it beyond the 10 hours, where would you put your highest concentration of content as a development company? As a streamer, definitely the first 2 hours are the only thing that matters. Content creation, the same. Like, where would you put your biggest discoveries? At the beginning. Where would you put your most exciting moments? At the beginning. Where would you put your best first impressions? At the beginning. And that is exactly what this game does. A heavy front-loaded experience designed to overwhelm the player with discoveries during the first few hours before gradually running out of things to show them. Now, I'm not saying this was done intentionally, I'm saying it was definitely done intentionally. And what I'm saying is that results feel exactly the same. The beginning feels dense, the middle feels stretched, the later stage feels like definitely sparse, and like exploration just slowly transforms into something like else entirely. It's like a scavenger hunt game. Not because there's too many things to find. there definitely isn't too many things to find either. Because there's too few things to find. Eventually, like, you stop exploring because, like, it doesn't matter anymore. What is there to discover after the first phase of the game? What is there to discover after the first area of the game? Like, you start exploring because you are, like, desperately looking for the next meaningful piece of content. Yeah, that's for sure. And that brings us, like, to the whole finding your story in this game, let's say, or more accurately, the world building of this. Because the more I thought about this game's setting, the less sense it starts actually to make. Because apparently, we have a strict do not harm wildlife philosophy behind the Subnautica game. Yet blasting creatures with sonic waves when we have to is apparently completely acceptable. So I'm not entirely sure where the line is supposed to be. That's one. But let's move a little bit beyond that. Because the map issue is what really bothers me here. Let me get this straight. I'm a part of a highly advanced interstellar exploration organization. As a player, I have a radio, sonars, scanners, navigation equipment. I can read, and I have already invented a compass, advanced computers and AIs. I have technology capable of printing people to the point of accuracy of molecules in human beings. I have machines capable of analyzing alien ecosystems and aliens in 3D scan. I have supercomputer processing unimaginable amount of data that is shared across all their data network. But nobody thought about making a map. They had about 20,000 hours. none of these scientists really got the pen and paper and drew something somewhere at some point? Apparently there's, like, where the technology finally reaches its limit. Like, have you remember Anita? Like, one of the things as a, let's say, garden person you do, you see what grows where, and you map it out. I'm not gonna talk more about that, because it just gets absurd if you start, like, knocking a little bit too hard on the doors of the whole plot of the game and the stories that are twisted and turned into open-ended nonsense. I gave my mask to a crab. Yeah, right. Yeah. Because mapping terrain, like, has absolutely nothing to do with exploration, by the way. Now, before somebody says, the lack of a map is part of the experience, let's think about that for a second. Okay, now we're getting, like, hot in here. Imagine, like, Subnautica 2 with a fully functional map. How much of an average player's playtime disappears overnight? How much of the game depends on meaningful exploration? And how much will depend on pure confusion without a map? How much depends on players, like, wandering around trying to figure out where they are supposed to go? As a content creator, I'm ashamed of half of the content that I had to make for this game, because it is giving address. Yes, Jonathan, to north, 200 meters, 50 below. Look at the hole, go inside, click the boop boop on the floor. Literal guide videos that are for this game, like, there's so much nothing to complex or anything to give guides about in this game, that the best guide videos for this game trending is giving address. I already live in Istanbul, man. I give enough addresses every day when I go to Taksim Square. Look, these are very different things. And when I compare the amount of actual content to the amount of time I spent searching for it, I start, like, wondering, whether the absence of this map really is a design decision or just simply a content multiplier. Maybe the multi-million-dollar company did not do this on purpose to make players more engaged or hide that I have nothing in reserve as content. Like, the more I played, the more it felt like confusion was being used as a gameplay mechanic, and mystery is being used as a substitute for depth, because it definitely is. Because it definitely is being used. At some point, like, you start talking about what the game might become, and you start, like, talking about what the game currently is, as you start, like, wandering into these rabbit holes that are, like, put very ginormously in front of your eyes as you're, like, playing the game. And, like, one of the most responses that I, like, received, let me go back to that. It is early access. And honestly, I think that argument raises more questions than it answers, by the way. This is not an small independent studio trying to survive long enough to finish a project. This is a company with more than a decade of experience in making the exact same game that they have invented. A company that already solved many of these problems once before. A company with hundreds, 320 employees reported on April 2026. I read it online. A company back, well, definitely they have significant resources, because 6 million copies of $20 is roughly $120 million, isn't it? And that is just for this early access game. Like, Subnautica 1 spent roughly 3 years in early access before release. Subnautica 2 reportedly began development around 2022. That is 4 years. 4 years. And when I look at the final design, I can't, like, stop not ask this, like, where exactly is that development time visible? Because the answer cannot simply be graphics, the answer can simply not be the lighting, it is not the polished features that it has. A sequel is supposed to build upon the foundation that already exists. It is supposed to move forward. It is supposed to evolve. Instead, like, I keep finding systems that feel simplified, ecosystems that feel less dynamic, exploration that feels less rewarding, and content that feels stretched across a much larger space than it's supposed to be. And that is where the like early access defense like starts falling apart for me, because this is not a different game or a category or even like remotely away from what they already made. They have every data, every feedback needed from the player base already existing there. Because if the game was like crashing constantly, if major systems were like missing from the game, if basic mechanics were not functioning, I could understand the argument of an early access. But this game has like definitely spent enough playtesting to never crash. And all of the tools work like completely for 100% functionality. Like, but most of the systems are already functioning, as I said. Like, they're just simply not deep enough. They're not engaging enough after some point. And they're not supposed to, by enough, like, bring meaningful content, which, like... This brings me to the next excuse that I keep hearing. The company drama, the management drama, the developers leaving, craft on situation, unknown world situation, shareholder situation, and honestly, I do not care. I generally do not care about this. The only thing that I care about is the product that is sitting in front of me right now. I care about a game developed by a company with more than a decade of experience making the exact same type of game. I care about a studio that already solved most of these problems once before. I care about a development team that had 4 years as established formula. This game has an established formula. That is a luxury that no early access game gets. That is one of the most differentiating things between like a product and an early access game. The formula. An established audience and a vast more resource than they had during like the development of the original game. Definitely the technical parts are like, technology has definitely like advanced enough, but it took 4 years to release early access somehow, because drama, because yeah. And despite all of that, what I see is a game that failed to deliver enough meaningful content while polishing nostalgia bait and cheap thrills with their marketing team. Because let me ask simple questions here, try to like answer it. Like, did the developers that leave take the enemy AI with them? Like, did they take the creature behavior with them? The ecosystem with them and the fish breeds did they take them with them? Like, did they, like, somebody left the content on their 32 gigabyte RAM while they were leaving their desk because they got fired? Did they take away the Leviathan attack variety or the depth in the exploration? Because every time somebody points at like a corporation drama, like I find myself looking back at the game and seeing the exact like same problem, the same empty areas, the same repetitive system, the same shallow progression, the same front-loaded content, and eventually I reach the same conclusion. The drama does not change the product. The product is still the product. And from where I'm standing, the product is not nearly good enough. Now let's talk about what is really happening here, shall we? Now, remember I told you, remember this, what I'm saying, because after looking at the game, the marketing, the community response, and the way people defend it, I keep coming back to the same idea. This game has a better marketing team than it has a development team. And before people get angry hearing me out, because those guys developed your childhood dream and what you spend your childhood with, I don't care. Look at what is being sold to you. Nostalgia, mystery, potential, and possibility. The promise that things will get better. The promise that player feedback will fix everything. The promise that the future updates will add what is missing. The promise that one day this game will become what everyone hoped it would be, and maybe it will. Maybe this game becomes fantastic. Maybe 2 years from now it is amazing. Maybe 4 years from now this video ages poorly. And that is entirely possible. But that is not the product being sold to me or you today. The product being sold today is a product I'm reviewing. Not the version that might exist after 50 updates. Not the version that might exist after another 4 years of feedback. The version that exists right now. And right now, I see a game that is selling hope far more effectively than it is delivering content. I see a community buying into the expectation that history will repeat itself. That player feedback will save the game. That early access will magically transform mediocrity into greatness. That eventually everything will be fixed, and maybe it will. But at some point, a sequel has to stand on its own, doesn't it? At some point, the content has to exist, doesn't it? At some point, the game has to be more than potential. Because people are buying potential. They are buying a product. Nobody buys potential. We are not investors. You are not investors. You are people who work day and night, earn money, and you have paid for nostalgia that was sold to you. And, okay, let me just conclude all of this in general. My conclusion is that currently selling hope for more, this is like generally it. Okay. In total, Subnautica 2 is a showcase of how to sell hope and nostalgia back to a community. That is my conclusion. Not that the game is completely unplayable, not that it cannot improve, not that it cannot become great one day. My conclusion is that it is currently selling hope far more successfully than it is delivering content. It is selling nostalgia, memories, and it is selling the expectation that one day it will become the game people already convinced themselves that it will be, or it is. And I think that's like taking advantage of a loyal player base rather than delivering what should reasonably be expected from a sequel developed by a company with this much experience, money, and time at their hand. And tolerance around this is honestly the most fascinating part, because nobody goes to a 5-star restaurant and gets served bad food, like calls the manager politely and says, "Hey, I know you guys are going through a lot right now, but maybe next year, could you make the steaks cooked properly?" And then like some random dude jumps out of a table from, "Early access, dude, do you even know what early access is?" That sounds... Do you hear how ridiculous this sounds? Because it is ridiculous. The product sitting in front of you is the product being judged, not the product that might exist in 2 years, not the product that might exist like after 100 updates, the product that already exists today. And honestly, if I ever have interns working under me, I'm a marketing specialist, by the way, I would probably have them study this entire Subnautica 2 launch as a case study, not as a lesson in game development or anything, as a lesson in how marketing can sell you garbage. Because this might genuinely be one of the most impressive demonstrations like I have ever seen of how to sell expectations and future promises while delivering a product that many people are already defending on the basis of what it might become rather than what it actually is. People are defending what the game might become instead of evaluating what it currently is, and it blows my mind. And let me tell you one thing about publicity. There is no bad publicity for a company that wants to make money. If you start hearing a lot of media coverage and, let's say, fights in a company, that is more reasons for publicity. Go keep track of time. I don't know it. Go keep track of the timetable of the events happening from the announcements of the time of the early access until the launch of the early access. What has been done for publicity about the game. Then you will understand what marketing can sell you without you even noticing it. See you in the next video, fellas. I am done.